tonight's topic is tailored towards teachers, and it's titled 9 Secret Strategies to Better Differentiated Learning. I know this is a regularly hot topic that many teachers and educational organizations speak about regularly. I know, obviously, by nature of you being on this call, this is something that's very interesting to you. You're passionate about this. Obviously, as a teacher, you want students to, you don't want one student to get ahead of another student. You want to try to create equality as much as you can so people can equally rise above at the same time. And so that's really what this call is being driven from. And I know Demetra is someone who is very passionate about this topic as well, and I'm really excited to have her on tonight's call to talk about these strategies that she's learned over her career. So sort of as a preempt to introducing Demetra, I just want to give you some background on who Demetra Turnbull is. She holds a Bachelor of Social Science from Western University. She has a teaching degree from University of Southern Maine. She also has 16 years of classroom experience. Her expertise lies in kindergarten through grade 8, so she's taught at all those levels, and her specialties topic-wise includes math, and has spent a lot of time focusing on and practicing differentiated instruction and assessment. Demetra's written and co-written over 180 titles. She's hosted countless workshops. I don't know if she can even tell you how many at this point over her career. Because of her passion to create practical resources for teachers to use in the classroom, she actually, a few years back, actually co-founded a company called GeoWatt Innovative Teacher Publishing. So she started there, but then in 2006, she also started Chalkboard Publishing. Chalkboard Publishing is a leading provider of reproducible supplementary educational materials for kindergarten through 8 teachers in both French and English. The comprehensive content reflects current curriculum standards and incorporates best teaching practices. Her products are found at Scholar's Choice, at scholarschoice.ca. A little more on Chalkboard Publishing. A lot of the products really focusing on engaging students with practical and stimulating activities to learn and reinforce essential concepts and skills. They're used by thousands of teachers across North America. Together with her husband, Dave, and toddler, Andrew, she was telling me a little bit of stories about Andrew before we came on the call. With Dave and her husband, Dave and Andrew, she lives in Toronto. And a little personal side, she loves spending time with her family and friends. In the short time I've known Demetra, she's spoken many times about actually traveling and skiing, and she's trying to get me to take a vacation, but I keep resisting her. Don't I, Demetra? All right.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for having me on this call, and thank you to Scholar's Choice for having me here and to talk a little bit about differentiated instruction. I'm honored to be here and excited about this call.
Thanks for being here, Demetra. Now, I know you're passionate about this because when we started to brainstorm with Scholar's Choice about having you come on and do this call, you really brought up the concept of differentiated learning. Why is this an area of teaching that interests you so much?
I think it mostly because it affects all children, and it's something we're probably doing all. If you're questioning if I'm doing it in the classroom, you probably are already doing it anyway. And most importantly, you want to think about how are kids learning in your class and where you want them to be. You know, it's a choice. You're either going to cover the curriculum or you're going to teach the curriculum, because we all know that one size does not fit all, and that kids are learning in different ways, that all the classrooms have students with a range of abilities, needs, and interests, and different backgrounds. And I came across this quote, and it really touched me, and it just says, if a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. It just makes so much sense, and it's something I tried to practice in my teaching when I was teaching for many years. And it's definitely something that, we try to encourage in the books that we write and have for teachers to use in the classrooms, or for, of course, parents who wanted to help their kids at home.
And Demetra, there's already, and I don't want to dive into too many questions before you dive into your content, but I want to kind of create this as a question that I know has come in, and maybe you can let Robin know if this is going to be covered in the nine strategies. that you're covering tonight. She's been teaching grade 2-3 class for 3 years now, and she says here in her message she is struggling to meet the needs of all the learners. So she's obviously a teacher that is just aware of that and is committed to figuring this out. So this is quote, 4 of my students are 1 IEPs, 2 informal and 2 formal, and 3 of them are working at the grade 1 level. So again, she's speaking about grades 2-3 here that she teaches. I tested the 4th one today, and she can only read 16 of the 40 pre-primer Dolch words. How do I do it all? so I'm sensing overwhelmed there. 20 students, 2 grades, and 4 grade levels helps. So is that something that you're able to speak into?
Absolutely.
On the Robin?
I'm sorry, her name is Robin?
And her name's Robin, yeah.
Robin, I have been there. I've taught those grades, and I feel you completely. This is something that, I know very, very well. And it's a big challenge. And we are definitely going to talk about that through this call.
Okay,
so,
great.
Yeah, definitely. That's really, really important. And it's a great thing you brought up, because it doesn't matter if it's grade 2 or 3. If you're teaching grade 5, you're still going to have kids who might be at a grade 2 level. And at the same class, you're going to have kids that are reading at a grade 7 level, or doing math at a grade 6 level, or doing math at a grade 1 level. So definitely, we're going to talk about that tonight.
And Robin says, wonderful, with an exclamation mark. Thank you, with a smiley face, Demetra.
Oh, thank you. That makes me feel so good. Thank you. Okay, so why don't we talk a little bit about differentiated instruction, and hopefully after this call, people will feel like they're getting something practical out of this. You can always get in touch with me later on. I'm sure Andrew will give you an email if you like, and you're welcome to contact me at any time. I'd love to hear from you. So as we were talking before in the intro, again, our classrooms, they're diverse. We have kids who come with all different backgrounds, different abilities, needs, and interests. And we as teachers have the biggest challenge trying to figure out how are we going to address the needs of all these kids while having to address the curriculum. And there's a huge accountability and expectation for teachers to have kids at a certain level at a certain time by this date, and they have to do it. Like, that's it, we're accountable. So it's a big challenge for everybody. And then also we have the different kinds of kids that like to learn independently, while other kids work better in a small group. Other kids need a lot more direction from the teacher and need, and we all have those kids where we need to be right beside them, teacher directed in a small working environment, and, trying to get them to move along. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Differentiated instruction is something that we touched upon just a little bit, and just saying that it's about teaching the curriculum to kids and getting kids to move along and continue to where they're supposed to be, rather than just covering the curriculum and just, ticking off the boxes and teaching what we need to teach to one size fits all. And we all know that doesn't really work. It'd be great if it did. It'd be so sweet if it did, but we all know it doesn't. Mm-hmm. So differentiated instruction, let's think of it as an instructional strategy. It's a strategy that we recognize and where we support individual kids and their differences in the way they learn. So it's an approach. I'm sorry, I said it was a strategy. It's an approach to teaching rather than a strategy. Mm-hmm. It's just something that we do all the time. And again, we're probably already doing it without even thinking about it. And as a result, we're going to have children and students and older kids, as well as teachers, who become more deeply invested in kids' learning. Kids are going to become more invested in their learning. And hopefully we're going to get kids to continuously expand and develop their skills. Okay, so differentiated instruction. Think of it as 3 steps. Number 1 is really obvious. It's get to know your students. Get to know your students just by saying hello to them first thing in the morning. Find out about their readiness levels, their learning preferences, their interests. You can do this formally and informally. Something I would suggest is making a folder for each student and just keeping a file of some of their interest surveys. Definitely take a look at any past reports that you might be able to see. Of course, if it's kindergarten, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. There's not going to be that much there. Ask parents or guardians about their kids' strengths. as kids what they think their strengths are and what they want to really work on or where they perceive they have some difficulty. I mean, I remember I was teaching grade 1, and this little girl said to me that she didn't know how to do math. And I looked at her and I just said, you know what? It's okay. When I was a little girl, I didn't know how to do very much math either, but I learned, and I just to show those kids that someone cares means so much to them and give them that confidence to try and to become risk takers. And I said, that's great. If you don't know how to do some math, that gives me a job to do. That's great. We're going to learn together. And having that kind of attitude to support those kids is really goes a long way, because then they become risk takers and they're going to try a little bit. Some other ways you might want to just gauge learning, and some people might probably already do this in the classroom, is what I know about a topic, what I would like to know about a topic, and then going back and check if I was right. Assessment is very important. You do this through anecdotal reports. Walking around, you're watching where kids are, maybe having some stick-it notes on a chart and just being able to write quick little notes to give you ideas about where kids are at or things that you notice. Keeping a journal. Again, you know what? This shouldn't be something where it becomes more work for you. You got to find out what works for you best. At the end of the day, trust your instinct because you know your kids. You know your kids because you're working with them. You know your kids because you're talking with them, conferencing with them. You see what they're doing in their daily work. That is huge. At the same time, do little, pre-assessments before you start a topic in math. Do, check along with a little question of the day to find out where they're at. And of course, you're doing the evaluation and seeing where, through some tests or a performance task, where the kids are and where they're grasping the material. It's okay. If a kid doesn't know something, and I'm going back to what Robin said, you have to start where the kids are. And as we're going to go through this call, I'm going to keep referring back to what Robin talked about because I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. And this is really good. And I just want to sort of reiterate something and make sure that I'm clear. You're not even at the 9 strategies yet, right, Demetra? You're simply saying, here are some preliminary steps. The first step is just get to know your students, and there's a lot of different actions you can take to do that. Do things that will work obviously for you as the teacher, but the denominator here is make sure you know your students.
Make sure where you know your kids on a personal level, because it supports them and makes them risk takers. It helps you know exactly where and how ready they are and where they're at on the continuum of what they need to know and how far they need to go. Sure. And, it helps everybody. And trust your instinct. That's something I really want to say is that, we're so bound by so many tests and everything that we have to, but you as a teacher, you know your kids. You know your kids, for sure. Also, using all this kind of information you gather, it helps you with the learning environment. For instance, when you're teaching younger children and older kids, of course, you want to have quiet spaces in the classroom because some kids thrive in being, in a nice quiet space without distractions. You might have a corner of the room that's like the quiet area. Mm-hmm. And having loud spaces with younger kids, that might be where you have like the construction and the paint and the art center and that kind of thing. The quieter space might be the writing area and the reading area. In older classrooms, you just have a corner that's, more of an independent study area. You have some conference tables and that kind of thing. So, think about the setup of your classroom and how it's going to work for you. Sure. Definitely have a conference table in your classroom in a place where it's easy for you to conference with kids, but still be able to see the lay of the land of where everyone is and kind of get an idea of what kids are up to. Because, you might have the intention everything's going to work, but the kids might have a different idea. You might keep on top of that. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the strategies. We're going to get right into it. Now, the big thing is creating tiered assignments. It goes back to what Robin says. You are going to be doing different tasks. We're using different levels of tasks to ensure that students are exploring ideas and using skills at a level that builds on what they already know, and you're encouraging development and mastery of a concept or skill. So keep in mind, tiered assignments should be, and it just means that it's different work. It doesn't mean necessarily it's more work or less work, but it's different work for different kids. Hopefully it's equally interesting and engaging for all the kids, and it's fair in terms of what the work expectations and the time needed. make sure when you're giving assignments, be it the whole group or you're giving tasks or assignments to individuals or smaller groups, that the kids understand what the success criteria is. It doesn't have to be a mystery of knowing how to succeed. Have an example there. Let them see what it's supposed to look like. Let them really understand where they need to get to. And also make sure that they have the base skills or concepts or ideas in order to do the work. So it's okay. Go back. Some ways to structure your tiered assignments is by using Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so Bloom's taxonomy, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but definitely go on the net and just look up Bloom's taxonomy. It's going to give you some quick little activities that it's associated with the different levels. The level 1 being knowledge, where it's very basic, where you're just like asking to recall facts. So maybe you're asking a question like describe the house that's described in the story or something like that. Who was the main character? That type of thing. And then you have level 2, where you have comprehension. Why are these ideas similar? And asking kids maybe to cut out or draw pictures to show an event. Level 3, you have application, where you're asking questions like demonstrate the way to, or which one is most like, that kind of thing. And some activities might be make a display to illustrate an event, or make a collection, or construct a model. And then, you're going through the different levels of Bloom's for that. Let's just go further for a sec. Another way is by complexity. How complex are you making the title express? For example, a tier 1 task. Okay, you're going to do the same idea for everybody, but a tier 1 level is to create a public service poster using a slogan or some art recycling, some we would do in grade 2. So some kids would be just saying cycle, exclamation point, or recycling is important, or something kind of snazzy, which I can't think of at the moment because I'm not in the snazzy grade 2 mood, but I'm sure a lot of grade 2s would, with a good picture. The tier 2 would be having some kids conduct a survey out in the classroom of different ways that they're recycling at home, and then reporting the results with some kind of a graph or an oral report or a written report. So they're all understanding that recycling is important. And another tier 3, or something a little bit more complex, would be the kids could debate about how important that is everybody. Why is it important for everybody to recycle? And why does every little bit count? And having kids express that and trying to convince somebody that they need to recycle. So that's an example. All the kids are getting the idea that recycling is important, but you have different expectations or different activities for the kids to take part in.
I have a question.
Sure.
So how would a teacher then, do you suggest, so you're dealing with a really busy week. There's 30 students. You might be a couple weeks now into the year, and you're just starting to learn about the individual students and their interests and stuff. How do you begin now to organize the students and begin to segment them into these different tiers and different tiered assignments and different tiers of complexity? How would you go about doing that?
Starting off at the beginning of the year, I would probably do some flexible grouping right off the bat until I get to know the kids. Yeah. And so, if you're working with kids who are grade 1, grade 2, at least you have a little bit of a background from the year before, hopefully, or some kind of report to go on. And sure. You know pretty fast, like the first day of school, you get the kids to write some kind of a, for younger kids, I always get them to do a portrait. Just get them to write something, and it gives you a clue as to where the kids are at. And just use that as a quick initial pre-assessment as to where kids are. Having some kind of a writing, make a postcard, make a picture, write about your summer, just give any kind of topic, or just getting them to write what they're excited about school gives you a quick snapshot of where the kids might be. And don't forget, your tiers are going to change as you go along, too.
Okay, and it's organic in that respect. Now,
Absolutely.
Jennifer asks, and this may be related or not. You may hear something more in this question, Demetra. She asks, how do you assess the tiered assignments for grading, then / levels? That's her question.
Um, for grading, you always have to look back at what's the purpose of the activity. If the purpose of the activity is to have kids understand the importance of recycling, you're good. It doesn't matter, the kids could say that orally. The kids could write about it. The kids could present a topic. If that, you have to always look at what is your end game? What do you want kids to know? If it's decoding text, that's like something from reading, you're going to be doing something different. But if it's something in social studies or science or in some different area, just go back and see what is it that we want kids to know, and what, I mean, is it so important that they have to read it? If they're answering comprehension questions about a story, if you're reading them that story and asking them questions, they're able to respond orally, then they comprehend it. They might not be able to write it, then they might have that capability yet, but you're not assessing on that. So always take a look at what are you focusing on and what's the purpose of your lesson. And that's how you kind of get a way around it.
Okay, okay.
Hopefully that helps.
So, yeah, Jennifer, if that fully answers your question, let us know. If you have a follow-up question, let us know as well. Jennifer has responded with thanks.
That's good. Okay, great.
Yeah. So Bloom's taxonomy now. So that's I take it very very common out there for teachers, so they can find that online as well if they want to start to drill into these six different levels further.
Definitely. Just Google Bloom's taxonomy, and you will see lots of activities. Bloom's taxonomy by activities, and you'll have a slew of things to choose from. And that will be very helpful. I have them listed in some of the books that I've written as well. It's always a good way to go back and get some quick ideas and activities that you might want to do in the class. Another thing, and it goes back to what we were just talking about, the different levels and tiers, is that one thing you do is by your resources you choose. You're choosing reading resources or materials at various reading levels and complexity. You might be talking about the same subject, and some kids are going to be using books that are high interest but low vocab, but get the same idea across. Other kids maybe might be using some technology. Maybe you're using some kind of an audio instrument where the kids are listening to what you're teaching about. It might be, you know, some kind of video. There are different kinds of resources that you're going to use. And it goes right back to what's the purpose of your lesson? What are you trying to get the kids out of? And we'll talk a little bit about math and literacy, because that's a whole other game. But just some of those kinds of things, you definitely use different resources.
Yeah, Demetra, do you find that if a teacher has created a new curriculum or new lesson plan for a year, and they're really fresh with this lesson plan or curriculum, do you find that differentiated education can be a little more challenging? And I'll use the example of resources. You know, I can only imagine being a teacher and trying to pair the different tools like textbooks up, but maybe this is the first time that I've really dove into this topic in this way before. Do you think that's naturally a challenge if it's a new curriculum for a teacher? How would they overcome that?
Okay, so one thing I would say, if a grade is new to you, pick one area of the curriculum that you want to dive into and really dive into, because if you try to do too many things at once, you're going to go crazy. So maybe literacy is going to be your thing. Maybe science is going to be your thing. Maybe math is going to be your thing. And when you get comfortable with one area of the curriculum, move on to the next. Because, you know, you are going to drive yourself crazy. Differentiating instruction is great. It takes a lot of work up front. You have to plan ahead. And something we're going to talk about are some of the tricks of the trade in having things available to you where you're able to keep things going on so that you can meet with those smaller groups, so that you can keep kids who are a little bit ahead of the class or where they need to be at that point to still inspire them to do more. They're able to do those activities as well.
Okay. Do you want to go into your second strategy here, letting students set their learning pace?
Yeah, I think that'd probably be a good idea. So I'm just coming down to that. So we talked about getting to know your students, and we're having different.
And And Demetra, I think I like this one because I think it's very consistent with your quote at the start of really focusing on and I don't have the quote in front of me, but really focusing on the student and not necessarily focusing on, as a teacher, what you want to get across, but being really in tune with them.
Yeah, it's really being in tune with them, and sometimes it can be a little bit daunting because, again, there's a lot of pressure in being accountable and having kids at at a certain level by a certain time. But by letting kids set their own learning pace, you'll probably be able to move those kids along to where they need to be faster. The reason is they're not stressed out. You're recognizing what level they're at, and you're starting from a specific point. And, because they're going to be kids who are going to be at a grade 3 level, but they're in grade 2, and then they're going to be kids who are in grade 5 and who are at a grade 2 level in reading and math. So you're going to, by doing that, is having a lot of organization in place, and it's probably by having, you have to decide what's going to work with you. So you have to figure out where the kids are. From our first caller, from Robin, she had a few kids who are doing an IEP. She had some kids who are at various different levels. So, you need to be able to carve out some time where you're working with some kids in a small group, and you have other kids who are, doing other activities. And, my intention with this call is to be able to go through each strategy, but, really, the kind of scaffold, there's a whole bunch of different things happening. So by allowing them to have the opportunity to learn at their own pace, that means you got to do some flexible grouping, which goes into the next strategy, where you have maybe a class expert, you have a kid that knows how to do double-digit addition and is showing another child or doing a game with them. It helps the child who already knows the concept to master it. It helps the child that doesn't know it to be able to learn it, and in a kind of a fun way. And maybe that one child who does not have the skill to learn double-digit regrouping and whatnot, maybe they know something else where they can shine in the classroom. With flexible grouping, you're going to have kids who you can use a combination where you have pairs of kids working together. And this could be all happening at the same time. At the same time, when you're doing some shared reading and guided reading, you can have a group of kids working on, a reading project. And I call it a reading project where they're working on a story, or they're reading some kind of, they have some kind of a reading, have to answer questions, or maybe they have to illustrate part of the story and explain their favorite part. But you have those activities set up, so it becomes very fluid. And you don't have to have the kids always in the same group. It's going to change. The groups can be assigned by the teacher. The kids can choose to be in the groups themselves. It really depends on the situation. And the beauty of it is that by having flexible grouping, you don't have kids that are going to feel labeled. And that's quite important as well. I'm sorry, Andrew, I think I cut you off. You were about to ask something?
Yeah, and I think just at the end you actually answered my question. So there's probably an advantage to having students be changed and mixed up quite frequently, because they won't feel like they're being labeled, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you change them up all the time. Like if you're going to have a little math group, you're going to have a little math group. You might change it up a bit when you're doing you maybe do some math centers. And doing math centers could be from kindergarten, and I used to do them right up to grade 8. The beauty of centers, for instance, is by having centers set up, kids are working on meaningful activities, and when they're engaged in meaningful activities, they're invested and they're doing what they need to do, and it gives you the opportunity to work with kids who might need more help, or you want to do more of a guided lesson, or you want to work with those IEP kids at something that that they need to be learning.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about class experts for a moment, Demetra? How do you identify class experts? I know that's your next strategy here.
Well, with class experts,
yeah, how do you identify?
Sometimes it's you as a teacher. Sometimes a kid just says, "Hey, I know how to do that. I'll show so and so how to do that." And you say, "Great, that is fantastic." You have to give kids opportunities to shine. And for those little guys or those kids who are on IEPs, you have to find something that they're good at and that gives them the ability to be a leader in the classroom and give them some confidence. It could be, they're really good with technology. They're great with the computer, so they become the computer expert. It might be one child's really good with artwork. So great, they can show you how to draw different things, or that goes back to getting to know your students and seeing what they're proud of and trying to promote that and give opportunity. For the kids who are maybe on the IEP and say they're in grade 4, give them an opportunity to go into a kindergarten class and being a reading buddy. Lots of times in grade 2, in grade 3, or in grade 1, we have reading buddies with older kids, but it's really nice to give those younger children to be with even younger children and be the buddy and be able to teach the little guys and let them feel important. So, and also talk about your own abilities as a teacher, that you don't know everything. You're a lifelong learner, and, everyone has something that they need to work on. And so, I think that, again, adds to the culture of the classroom and the mood of the classroom. If you have a culture in the classroom where everybody's important, everyone has something to offer, everybody needs to be doing their own thing, and it's okay, you'll find that a lot of the discipline problems you have will be diminished. You're always going to have it. Don't get me wrong. You're always going to have kids who, are busy. But if you can engage them in something and have something meaningful for them to do to engage them so that you can work with somebody else, then you're golden. Then, you're able to get a lot further ahead.
Yeah, the class experts, I understand totally the concept, and it seems to me counterintuitive from what you would think would be common sense within a classroom. Do you find that students in these settings who are not the experts, do you ever find that they any of them end up dealing with self-esteem issues? Do they get self-conscious over the fact that they aren't being centered as an expert? And if you've seen that, Demetra, in your history teaching, what actions can a teacher do to prepare for that for those?
I'm sorry to understand. Do you feel centered up because they're the class expert, or that they're working with a class expert?
Because they're working with experts.
No, honestly, I haven't. For the most part, I haven't. No, actually, it just becomes a natural thing in the classroom. It depends on how you go about doing it.
Yeah.
It's about your attitude and the way you direct it.
Yeah, right. Like, it'll naturally happen, and then the teacher should just be supportive of it happening.
Absolutely.
For this strategy. Awesome. Yep.
If you don't make it a big deal, it's not a big deal to the kids. It's all about the culture in the classroom and making it out like really easy. It's like, oh, you know what? Oh, we're working on so-and-so. Oh, you know what? So-and-so's really good at that. Why don't you guys work on it together for a bit?
When I was in grade 4, I had my best friend. I remember his name was Howard, and he was the class expert.
Yeah.
And this kid was so smart, and he was so helpful to all the students, like the kindest boy you'd ever meet. And he was so good that they ended up pulling him out of class and sent him off to an even smarter school. So we lost our class expert in that sense.
Hey,
everything was until Howard left.
Another thing I would do too is get older kids to come in and volunteer.
Yeah.
Working with the younger kids, I always was able to get teachers in the older grades who, if I was teaching grade 2 or 3, even grade 4, I'd be able to get grade 7s or grade 6s or grade 4s, whomever, as long as it was a younger group, come back and work on a little bit, something specific. It used to be a lot of math or doing research or that type of thing, or reading buddies and that kind of thing, and It worked so well. It worked really, really well. And I found teachers I always was able to find a teacher to work with who would be willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something. Also, why don't we go into about taking account and identifying and accommodating learning styles. And that really goes into multiple intelligences. And again, go on the net. I went on the net and I found this great PDF, and it just said differentiated instructional strategies, ideas for centers and projects. And it's grouped by multiple intelligences, so you too could find that very easily. So, you have verbal and linguistics, so kids who are much more verbal, you can have them prepare a report. You can have them, recite a poem and talk about it. Have them listen to an audio tape, or actually not well, I guess we still have audio tapes, but you understand the idea, or be able to give an interview. Um, Kids who are more kinesthetic learners, you want them to be a little more active, do some role playing, construct a model. Maybe they can work through some kind of a simulation, that type of thing. Then you have kids who are more musical, so you're doing get them to create jingles, or even playing soft music in the background, and that usually gets kids to get centered. Interpersonal, kids who work best in small groups, or enjoy that, who want a lot of discussion, who want to solve a problem together. Kids who are naturalists, discover, and they like to do experiments and categorizing things and looking for ideas. And then we have kids who are more logical, mathematical, where they want to analyze and they like to classify things and that type of thing.
Hey, Demetra.
Yeah.
Cassandra, and probably a few people
Sure.
would love to hear this again. Can you repeat what the PDF is and how everybody on the call can find it by Google?
Go on Google and just Google differentiated instruction / multiple intelligences, and you'll be able to find lots of materials on that.
So what I'm going to do for everybody is I've actually typed that as well. So if you go into your chat box here in a moment, I will send it out. So it's actually going to be dispersed to everyone momentarily.
Yeah, and you know what? And after the call, I'll go back and I'll find the exact link where I'm referring to, because it's actually quite good. Because it has ideas for centers and projects.
Great.
And then it has also suggestions for other suggestions. So, I'm just going to go quickly through it. Interpersonal would be think, pair, share. That's something a lot of teachers already do. Drama or class meetings or role play. Interpersonal, using a lot of self-talk, getting kids to journal or rehearse it or trying to connect it to different things. So I will do that at the end if that works for everybody.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that gets off to everybody.
Yeah, and as well, if anyone has any questions after the call and needs some clarification, again, I'm available through email, and I'd be happy to help anyone out. Okay?
Yeah, and we'll make sure we before wrapping up, we'll make sure that we give everybody the spots where they can connect with you afterwards, Demetra.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably for everybody.
Sounds good. Okay, so encouraging independent quests. These are where you're just taking into account what kids really want to learn about. I always found that, kids in grade 2 and 3, they really enjoyed research. They wanted to do research about something. So that was a great way to get them to looking at nonfiction text and getting into the writing skills and presentation skills. And, I would do with grade 6. It could be some kinds of science project or, with any grade. And so the key to this is choosing a topic that the kids are into. And also you have to really decide what kind of kid is this and what kind of direction are they going to need, and how will they know if they're going to be successful. So being able to give them a rubric or the success criteria is really important. And so these independent quests are going to really change depending on who it is that you're working with. In a lot of my books, I have different activities that you could probably, I'm a big believer of being pretty practical and having activities on hand that you can use with different situations. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we're assigning student contracts, and also with organizing learning centers and that type of thing. When you're assigning a student contract, it just means that on a piece of paper, you have maybe the days of the week, maybe you have different kinds of activities that they must do. I used to have their must-dos as well as their nice-to-dos. And so their must-dos might be they have to do 3 activities. If you're working on a textbook, they have to do these 3 pages after an introduction, say at the first of the week, of what the big overall arching idea is. And they can independently work on that contract. The contract works very well because it gives kids choice, but also gives them a boundary of what they need to do. And, on that contract, you can have kids work on something that's much more ongoing. You can have kids work on something that's immediate. Again, if you're working on a textbook, it could be a few pages. It could be some kind that you're reading from a book. You can do it by a single subject area. You could do it over, just have a time dedicated where you have a period a week or 2 periods a week where you have different activities. and on that contract. And while the kids are working independently on those, you're able to pull in groups and work with them as a small group or individually conference with kids. And it works extremely, extremely well.
And Demetra, do you recommend one contract at the start of the year or several contracts at predefined times during the year?
Well, your contracts are going to change because your activities are going to change. Some of your anchoring activities might not change, and those anchoring activities, what I mean by that is that an activity that goes on all year, and that could be journal writing.
Right.
It could be, you're working at, some artwork. It could be you're working on a poetry portfolio. It could be, you're just reading and you're doing a reading log, and you have several different kinds of questions that you can use with your reading comprehension questions or activity questions associated with what you're reading about. It could be a novel that's been assigned. It could be storybooks. It could be, it really depends on where the kids are at.
This one seems like a really, they're all important, but this one seems very, very valuable in that I feel like if these type of contracts aren't in place, it makes it really difficult for students to really have the structure that they require to really fulfill some of the key outcomes within the school year.
Okay, with the younger kids, I would put a big chart up and have pockets and have maybe popsicle sticks with the kid's name, and you're assigning where those kids are going to start off at a center. Okay? So the kids are going to start off at, you have two kids that are going to start off at the math center, or maybe you have 5 math centers and you number them. And so, you have 3 kids that are going to be working on center number 1, or, do it by color. They're at the red center or the yellow center. You go through all the activities and introduce each activity so the kids have a good understanding of what they're doing. And that gives you time to be able to pull kids aside and to be able to work with them in a small group. So with younger kids, you can do it by popsicle sticks and having them, pulled out. At some point, you might have the kids sitting on the carpet or at their desk or wherever you have them, and they can say, I like to work at this center, and then the popsicle stick goes into that pocket. And the kids are choosing where they like to start off. And the thing is that you have the rule that kids are only allowed to be 3 to a center, and they can self-regulate. You have to work up to that. Baby steps for everything. Don't feel like you've got to do learning centers and contracts and all this stuff right within the first week. The kids need to know what the expectations are, and you have to have the organization in place. If you can figure out what your organization is and you have the kids understand the system, I promise you it becomes a very fluid classroom, and it becomes peace of mind for you to be able to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to do it baby steps. First of all is by getting to know your kids. Second of all is thinking by subject area where you like those kids to be realistically by a certain time. What do those kids need? So those centers that you have, there are going to be some that are independent, where in free-flowing, where you don't, they don't really have to have a lot of instruction. They're going ahead and working on them, and it's easy to get kids to work at. Maybe it's exploring pattern blocks. Maybe, and this is for older kids too, grade 3 and grade 4, have them sort pattern blocks and categorize them in different ways. What are different things they can do with them? And then have other centers that are associated with the contract that they must do. Regardless, if the kids are working on meaningful activities, it gives you time to work with the kids that need the help or that you need to cue in and get them to move along in a subject area.
Okay, everybody, that wraps up tonight's webinar, 9 Secret Strategies to Better Differentiated Learning. On behalf of Scholar's Choice, we thank you for listening. And if you wish to directly get in touch with Demetra, she's the president at Chalkboard Publishing and can be reached through email at info@chalkboardpublishing.com. You can also find Demetra's teaching products at Scholar's Choice's web store, which is at www.scholarschoice.ca. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful day.